Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry I haven't posted in a while, like a long while. But anyway, I'm back now, and I'm here to talk about some underrated, unknown commander cards that I think you should put in most, if not all of your decks. And guess what? They're all budget. Yeah, so anyway, the first one I want to talk about is this card, Shattered Angel. It's a 3/3 for 5 with flying, and has whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you may gain 3 life. Yeah, in a 4-player game, that has the potential to get you 9 life a turn. And if it doesn't, that means that your opponents are hitting their land drops, which is also good for you. Yeah, and normally, when people say everything you need to have in a commander deck, they have like ramp, draw, and stuff like that. But I think that one thing that they always leave out is life gain. It's always useful to have like maybe 3-5 life gain cards in your deck. Like, I mean, if you're playing like mono blue or something and you can't squeeze it in, that's fine. But I think that it's always useful to gain life in case you get down to that situation where you're not dead, but you're at like 10 life, and you can't really do anything because you have to make sure you don't die. And this card gives you the ability to get out of that situation and back into the game. So I think it's great. Aminatu's Augury. This is an 8-mana blue sorcery. And it reads, exile the top 8 cards from your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Until end of turn, for each non-land card type, you may cast a card from that type among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost. So basically, you exile top 8 cards, and then from them you can play a land, a creature, a sorcery, an instant, enchantment, and artifacts, and stuff like that for free. Now, this is great because it lets you just dump your entire top 8 cards onto the battlefield. And it can really just make the game explode in one turn. And yeah, it's insane. Narset, Parter of Veils. For 3 mana, it's a planeswalker that starts at 5 loyalty, and it has each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. That's really the main reason why the card is good. It stops your opponents from drawing more than 1 card a turn, which shuts off a bunch of things, and just a really great effect. And on top of that, it has -2. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it into your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So yeah, you can get stuff into your hand, and yeah, it's just really good. Archetype of Imagination. I love this card. It's a 4-mana 3/2. Creatures you control have flying. Creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. Yeah, it just says it right there on the card. Your opponents can't block whatever you play. It's great. And once you play it, it just potentially opens you up to win the game in the next few turns by combat damage, because you can just keep swinging over and over again, and they just can't do anything about it. And then over here we have Arcanist the Omnipotent. It's a 3/4 for 6. It has really the reason that you play it. It has tap it, draw 3 cards. And for 4, return it to its owner's hand, which is protection. But still, tap it, draw 3 cards. That's 4 cards a turn. Yeah, it's hard to lose with value like that. It really is. Amphin Mutineer. Now, this card is mostly just really great in mono blue decks and stuff like that, because, as most of us probably know, mono blue in Commander lacks really a way to destroy something permanently. What it can do is it can return stuff back to the hand, but then they can just play it again. This gives you the ability to just get rid of it. And yeah. Jace Mirror Mage. It's a 3-mana planeswalker with starting loyalty 4, and it has kicker 2, so when you play it, you can pay an extra 2. And if you do, you get the kicker effect, which is, when enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's not legendary, and its starting loyalty is 1. So, you can have 2 of them if you copy it. And it has +1 Scry 2, which is good. And 0, draw a card and reveal it, remove a number of loyalty counters equal to that card's converted mana cost from Jace Mirror Mage. So, what you want to do with this deck is you always want to pay the kicker. What it does is you play it for 5, you get 2 of them, and then your draws are always perfect for the rest of the game. Well, until you have it, if you can keep it around, your draws are just perfect. And the 0 ability is good because lands have 0 mana cost. So if you need to hit a land drop, you can just put a land in front and 0 draw a card, and it loses no counters. And Zur's Weirding. It's a 4-mana enchantment. Players play with their hands revealed. If a player would draw a card, he or she reveals it instead, and any player may pay 2 life. If a player does, put that card into its owner's graveyard, otherwise that player draws a card. I absolutely love this. It's a lot funner to play with than it sounds, because you can just stop your opponents from drawing stuff, but the pay 2 life thing it adds up over time. Like, I've had games where people just kill themselves by paying like 30 life with it to make sure that your opponents don't draw anything. It's a fun card, and the game is normally skewed in your favor, because if you play it, you know how to use it. Like, I would say normally let your opponents draw most of the things, unless you know that they're directly going to be used against you, or they're going to win them the game. That's really what it's for. It stops your opponents from letting you win the game, and it also makes them pay a bunch of life. And it takes some getting used to. I have to say that. But once you can get used to it, it's just going to slowly win you the game, because your opponents aren't going to really do anything but pay life to stop your cards, while you know how to use it, and you know how to take advantage of it best, and it just works really well. On to Curse of the Swine. Most people know this card because it works really well with Hinata. But yeah, most people don't consider it as an actual card that you can use. For 2 blue and X, exile X creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller creates a 2/2 green board token. So yeah, you can just pay like 4 to do it and get rid of all your opponent's threatening stuff, so they're just left with small things and boars. It's really great. I love it. Inevitable Betrayal. Now this card doesn't have a mana cost, which is interesting. But what it does have is to spend 3 for 3 mana. So you can pay 3, exile it, and then in 3 turns you get to play it for free. So yeah, you can get it out potentially like 6th, 7th turn maybe. And search target opponent's library for a creature card, and put that card onto the battlefield under your control. That player shuffles. Now, I really started using this card when Isshin was big, the card that doubles all attack triggers. And then I would just, every time, target the Isshin player, go get Aurelia the War Leader, and then just win the game. But even if they're not playing Isshin, they normally have at least one giant thing in the deck for you to hit. And if they don't, remember, you're playing with 3 opponents. There's going to be at least one person. Telepathy. Now this is a really salty card. For 1 blue mana, it's an enchantment. Your opponents play with their hands revealed. You just know everything your opponents are going to do. Yeah. Anyway, Confounding Conundrum for 2 blue mana. When it enters, draw a card. Whenever a land enters out of an under opponent's control, if that player already played a land this turn, they return a land to their owner's hand. And yeah, it draws a card and prevents your opponents from ramping. I feel like it's really underestimated how good this card is, because it really worked great and you have to actually play it to see it. And it only affects your opponents, so you can still play it in like a Simic deck. Firmament Sage. 4 mana, it's a 2/3. If it's neither day or night, it becomes day as in battlefield. And whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, draw a card. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, if someone plays 2 spells in a turn, it becomes day. And if someone plays no spells in a turn, it becomes night. You can normally draw at least 1 extra card in a turn cycle with this, which is really nice. Then I have a bunch of cards that do this. Actually, I think it's just this and the red one, which is better. Reaper from the Abyss. It's a 6 mana 6/6 demon with flying, and has Morbid. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, destroy a target non-demon creature. Normally something dies every other turn, so then that's 2 removal spells a turn. So as long as this is out, your opponents just can't do anything without it getting removed. Avatar of Woe. It's an 8 mana 6/5, and as long as there are 10 or more creature cards total in all graveyards, it costs 6 less to cast. And it's a 6/5 with Fear, and just tap it to destroy a target creature. It can't be regenerated. Normally at least one player is going to be playing a deck that finds a way to put an insane amount of cards into the graveyard. And yeah, so you can normally play it for 2 black. And Fear is nice because it can't be blocked except by artifacts or black creatures. So if you want to hit somebody with it, that's good. But I would really recommend the tap it to destroy target creature can't be regenerated. It's removal every turn, and yeah, the can't be regenerated thing, that's never really come in handy. I've never played a removal spell and been like, oh, I wish this said that it can't regenerate. Never happened to me. In fact, post in the comments if it's happened to you. Demon Lord Belzinok. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a 6/6 or 6 with Flample, and it has, when it enters the battlefield, exile a card from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. Then put that card into your hand. If the card's mana cost is 4 or greater, repeat the process. It deals 1 damage to you for each card put into your hand that way. So if you have a bunch of cards that cost 4 or more, this card is great in your deck, because you can just play it, refill your hand, and yeah, you're never really gonna end up paying 4 or more life. I'm actually trying to build a deck where you just use this to get an infinite combo into your hand. It's gonna be really fun. Baleful Force for 8 mana. It's a 7/7. Now listen to this. At the beginning of each upkeep, you draw a card and lose 1 life. That's 3 extra cards a turn. Yeah. So that's crazy, and it's also a 7/7, which is a pretty big body. I have nothing more to say about that. It's just good. Sunbird's Invocation. I'd say this is a card that most people know about, but don't use for some reason, even though it's incredible in Commander. It's a 6-cost enchantment. That is, whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's mana value. You may cast a spell with mana value X or less from among cards revealed this way without paying its mana cost. Put the rest of them on the bottom of the library in a random order. Yeah, sometimes when you play this, it can just win you the game. It's insane. Dragon Master Outcast. It's a 1/1 for 1. And as at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 6 or more lands, you get a 5/5 red dragon with flying. If left unchecked, this card can be insane. But a bunch of people stop playing it because, well, it normally just gets lightning bolted in the early game or something. but they're playing. Everyone who says that is playing it wrong. You don't play it first turn. You play it sixth turn when it's going to trigger on the next upkeep. So instead of having 6 turns to deal with it, they only have 1 turn. It's normally going to get you like 2 or 3 dragons, which is really good for 1 mana. And then now these modal cards from Forgotten Realms are a lot better than they look. This one is you find some prisoners for 2 mana. Choose one. Break their chains. Destroy target artifact. And interrogate them. Exile the top 3 cards of an opponent's library. Choose one of them until the end of your next turn. You may play that card. Then you may spend mana as though mana of any color to cast it. Yeah. So it's really good. It can destroy an artifact, which is normally what you're going to do. But if you're mana screwed or there's no artifacts, you can do it on the other side. And then you can either get a land, which is normally what you're going to do with that. But you're going to get a land and then play it. And then be able to play bigger stuff next turn if you're mana screwed. And then, but sometimes there will be something that you generally like, that you want to play, and I find that it's just never really useless. Outpost Siege, and it's a 4-mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. And Khans is at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library until end of turn. You may play that card. And Dragons is whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to any target. Yeah, so it's nice. It lets you draw an extra card each turn. And yeah, but sometimes you're normally going to want to choose Dragons for this. You're normally going to want to choose Khans for this. But if your opponent's playing like a commander with like 1 or 2 toughness and they've been salty to you or something, I don't know. Then you can just play that and then kill their commander over and over and over again to make sure they have no fun, and it's going to be awesome. Fervent Mastery. For 5 mana, it's sorcery. You may pay 4 rather than pay this spell's mana cost, and if the 4 cost was paid, an opponent may discard any cards and then draw that many cards. And it has search your library for up to 3 cards and put one of them into your hand, then shuffle, then discard 3 cards at random. And yeah, it's a triple tutor, which is good. And now normally the 4th thing is actually kind of helpful, because if you're trying to make nice with a guy or you want a favor from them, you can just say, hey, I'm going to play Fervent Mastery, and if you want me to, I can pay 4 for it, and then you can get the chance to filter out your hand, draw some cards, and exchange. You can maybe do X, Y, and Z for me, and it works really well. Obsessive Astronomer, this is the other day and night card. This is probably the best one. For 2 mana, it's a 2/2, and if it's neither day or night, it becomes day as it enters the battlefield. And whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you may discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. Yeah, it's really good at helping you filter out your deck so that you can find exactly what you want. And yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about it. Garruk Unleashed. Now this is probably one of my favorite Garruks. It's a really nice one. For 4 mana, it's a Planeswalker starting loyalty 4, and it has +1 up to 1 target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. -2, create a 3/3 beast creature token, and if an opponent controls more creatures, then you put a loyalty counter on it, so it becomes more of a -1. And -7, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, you may search your library for a creature card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. So yeah, it's standard Planeswalker. But all the abilities are really nice. The +3/+3 and one can really help a deck to be way more aggressive. And the -2 can get you a body. and the -7 if you can get it. That's just insane. Like, wow. Yeah, your opponents just have to deal with this the second it comes down, and it's really cheap and nice, and you should probably run it. Kenris Transformation. Some of you may know this card. It's a 2-mana enchantment. As enchant creature, when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and it loses all abilities and becomes a green elk with base power and toughness 3/3. So yeah, you can play it on your... The way you use this card is you play it on your opponent's commander, draw a card, and then it becomes a 3/3 with no abilities, and it hasn't technically left the battlefield, so they can't put it back into their command zone and play it again. They need to find a way to destroy the creature or the enchantment. So yeah, it can just... If you use it right, it can just lock an opponent out of the game. Orochi Leafcaller. Now this card is good in decks with like 3 or 4 colors, maybe. It's a 1-mana 1/1, and it has for green, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Now this is really nice because it can turn green mana into mana of any color, and it doesn't tap to do the effect, so you can do it as many times as you want. It also goes infinite with Harmonic Prodigy, which I'm building a modern deck around. And Bio-Waste Blob for 4 mana. Oozes you control with +1/+1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a commander, create a token that's a copy of Bio-Waste Blob. So it's basically Scoot Swarm, because if you have your commander, it doubles every turn. You don't even need to keep playing lands. And as you have more of them, they get bigger. So at first you have 1/1/1, 2/2/2s, 4/4/4s, 8/8/8s, 16/16/16s, and yeah, once you have that, you've just won, basically. You happen upon a Glade, another great modal spell. For 3 mana, as choose one. Either search library for 2 basic land cards, put them into your hand, then shuffle, or make camp, return target permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, if you have this in your opening hand, you're normally going to want to do the 2 basic land cards. Make sure you have a land drop and can definitely get to like 5, 6, 7. And if you draw it on the late game, it's a regrowth, basically. You meet in a tavern for 4 mana. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of creature cards from among them and put them into your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Or creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Yeah, so it can either help So for creature decks, it can either help refuel your hand or end the game, which I think is a good effect. Now moving on to the multicolored cards. Here we have Medomai the Ageless. It's a 4/4 flying for 6, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, take an extra turn after this one. And Medomai the Ageless can attack during extra turns. But still, instead of getting 1 turn, you get 2. I don't think I have to explain that anymore. Sorin Vengeful Bloodlord. It's a 4-mana planeswalker starting loyalty 4. You mostly want to use this for the static ability, which says as long as it's your turn, creatures and planeswalkers you control have lifelink. Which, yeah, you're going to gain a lot of life off of this card. And it has +2. It deals 1 damage target player, planeswalker, and -X. Return a creature with mana by X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And it's a vampire addition to its other types. Yeah, so you gain a bunch of life, and you can potentially reanimate something that dies. It's a really nice card. Dakon Shadowslayer. It's a 3-mana planeswalker, and as it enters the battlefield with a number of loyalty counters on them equal to the number of lands you control. So it's going to be useful at whatever stage of the game you play it at. And it has +1 Surveil 2, which is like scrying, except the cards go into your graveyard instead of on the bottom. So it fixes your draws. -3, exile target creature, which is removal. And -6, you may put an artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. Yeah, the -6 probably isn't great, but the +1 and -3 are incredible, and I definitely recommend you play this card if you can. Mardu Ascendancy. It's a 3-mana enchantment, and as whenever a non-token creature you control attacks, put a red goblin onto the battlefield attacking, and you can sack it to give all your creatures +0/+3 until end of turn. Yeah, I mean, whenever something attacks, you get a goblin attacking that player. It's just really good. And also, you can sack it to help block an onslaught or something like that. Tamiyo, Collector of Tales. 4 mana, Planeswalker with starting loyalty 5, and spells and abilities you control your opponent's control can't cause you to discard cards or sacrifice permanents. Yeah, that shuts down a couple of things, but not much. It's mostly about the other stuff. +1, choose a non-land card name, and then reveal 4 cards off the top of your library, and then put all cards with the chosen name into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. And -3 returns something from your graveyard to your hand. Yeah, so the mainly what I'm focusing on is the -3, which is regrowth, basically. It's a repeatable regrowth on a Planeswalker. And the +1 can help you dig for things that you maybe need, and it can just get stuff into your hand if you're scrying. And then, not to mention, it also fills your graveyard for stuff to regrowth with it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend taking out your Ewit for this if you can. And Death Ritual. It's a 4-mana enchantment that has, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, you may draw a card. And at the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, you may draw a card. And yeah, that's great, really, because normally something dies. It's not something they control. It's just anything that dies. So normally, you're gonna have you're gonna draw 2 or 3 extra cards a turn with this card. It's insane. Even Mimomancer. This is an interesting one. It's a 3-mana 3/1 flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can put a feather counter on target creature, and if you do, that creature has base power and toughness 3/1, 3/1, and has flying for as long as it has a feather counter on it. So yeah, if one of your opponents plays like an 8/8 or a 10/10 with trample, and you just don't want to have to deal with that, which, believe me, is gonna end up happening no matter what kind of decks you're playing against. Yeah, you can just feather it, and it's a bird thingy. And then Bituminous Blast. For 5 mana, it's an instant with Cascade and deals 4 damage to target creature. Now this, in my mind, is maybe S tier removal. And it's mostly because of the Cascade, which automatically makes it synergize with your deck. Because you're gonna play it, you're gonna kill something from probably your opponent's commander or something like that. And then you're gonna get some gas, basically. The Celestus for 3 mana. I love this card. It's a legendary artifact, and if it's neither day or night, it becomes day as it enters the battlefield, and it can tap for 1 mana of any color. And for 3 and tapping it, if it's night, it becomes day, otherwise it becomes night. Activate only as a sorcery, and whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you gain a life. You may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Yeah, so it's a mana rock that can control the day-night cycle, and it gives you draw and life gain whenever it changes, and you can change it manually if you need to. And here we have Decimator of the Provinces. It's a 10 mana 7/7 with Trample and Haste, and it has Emerge 9, which makes it green. So basically, the way Emerge works is you sacrifice. You can play it for its Emerge cost and sacrifice a creature, and then you pay mana equal to the Emerge cost minus the thing's mana cost. So if you sacrifice something that costs 3, then you can play this only for 6. And whenever you cast it, creature you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. Now I've basically been using this as like a budget Craterhoof Behemoth, and it works. It works really well. Because normally what's most effective about Craterhoof Behemoth, I mean, it's turning everything into a 10/10 it really is most of it, but really the trample is what pushes it over tops, because they can't just chump block it, and I find that giving it +2/+2 and trample normally works just as well. And also, it's when you cast it, so your opponents can't counter it like they could a Craterhoof Behemoth. Magnetic Web. This is out of all the cards I'm going to show you, this is my favorite. I love this card so much. It's a 2-mana artifact from Tempest. It's kind of old. And if any creature with any magnet counters on it... Well, actually, before I read this, I'm just going to say it has a wall of text that makes no sense. I'm going to explain the card after to you. If any creature with any magnet counters on attacks, all creatures with magnet counters on them attack... See, I can't even say it. All creatures with magnet counters on them that the attacking player controls attack if able. If any creature with magnet counters on it attacks, all creatures with magnet counters on them that the defending player controls block that creature if able. And to pay 1 and tap it, put a magnet counter on target creature. So basically, what it says is you can pay 1 and tap it to put a magnet counter on something, and while it has a magnet counter on it, if you try to attack with something with a magnet counter on it, everything else you have has to also attack. That's really useful because you can just put it on your opponent's like 2/2 commander and their 10/10 that they really want to swing with, and then they can't do that without losing their commander. And now the second part of it is better than the first. If any creature with magnet counters on it attacks, all creatures with magnet counters on them block that creature, which is basically what it says. So yeah, if you can just put it on something big, and then put it on an important that's small, which you can do this at instant speed, so it's really great. So if your opponent swings with like a 5/5, and then you put a magnet counter on your opponent's like 2/2 commander, and then they have to block. It's so mean. Yeah. It just gives you a stranglehold over all combat. I could talk about this for hours, but I really shouldn't. Because I know you guys probably don't want to talk about it for 5 hours. And now you have the last one, Soul Talisman. It's an artifact without a mana cost, so you can't play it. You have to suspend it for 3 by paying 1 mana. And it's basically Soul Ring, but if you play it first turn, you get it on the 4th turn, which is actually not that much of a downside, because there's actually a study that I recently found that shows that playing Soul Ring turn 1 actually decreases your win rate, because everyone's like, oh, we gotta get that guy. It's a lot better if you play it 3rd or 4th turn and just pretend like you drew it, and it doesn't have that much of a downside, because what are you really going to do first 3 turns unless you're like a really low to the ground deck? And yeah, this just forces you to do what actually helps you. And yeah, having 2 Soul Rings in a deck is just crazy. Yeah, so anyway, that's all the cards that I have to show you. Well, bye, see you next time. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on what you thought. And if there's anything that you think that I missed,